You weren't abandoned. You were promoted to a dimension that doesn't have witnesses yet. Right now, while you're watching this, there's a specific reason why certain people suddenly vanished from your life. Not because they chose to leave, but because your frequency literally expelled them from your field. And before you think this is some spiritual platitude, let me show you what's actually happening in your consciousness right now, backed by quantum mechanics, not just mystical thinking. There's this strange restlessness you've been feeling lately. It's not the absence of something, it's the presence of something so massive trying to emerge that reality itself needs to reconfigure around you. Most people panic at this point. They start calling old contacts, forcing conversations, twisting themselves into 1,000 shapes just to prove they still belong somewhere.
But you felt something different, a deep calm, almost ancestral, as if for the first time you were truly alone and simultaneously had never been more complete. This isn't chance. This isn't bad luck. This isn't a sign that something's broken in your life. It's the clearest signal that everything is too right for the old world you left behind. And if you've made it this far, hit subscribe now, because YouTube only shows content like this to people who actually engage. Don't let the algorithm skip you. Let me take you back to 1927, Copenhagen. Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg are standing in a laboratory, staring at something that would crack open our entire understanding of reality. They just discovered that a particle exists in all possible states simultaneously until the moment someone observes it.
The act of observation, consciousness itself, collapses infinite possibilities into one single reality. They called it wavefunction collapse. And here's what almost no one tells you. This doesn't just apply to particles in a lab. It applies to you, your life, your manifestations, every single moment. When you exist in a collective field, surrounded by people who know the old version of you, their observation locks you into that identity. Their expectations, their memories, their perception of who you are creates a quantum anchor. You're not just dealing with social pressure. You're dealing with literal consciousness interference, preventing your wave function from collapsing into the new reality you're trying to birth. The universe doesn't isolate you because you did something wrong.
It isolates you because you're about to quantum leap, and that leap requires zero observational interference from the old timeline. Think about Raphael, successful architect in New York, sharp suits, penthouse view, business dinners every Friday night. On the outside, perfection. On the inside, a void no blueprint could fill. Until one sleepless night at 3 a.m., he stood in front of his bathroom mirror and heard a question that had been echoing silently for years. How long will you keep building houses for others while your own soul lives in rubble? That week, he turned down a partnership offer, walked away from 2 major contracts, started wandering the city with no destination, no plan, just the certainty that he needed to stop running from himself. Over the following months, almost everyone around him disappeared. Colleagues said he'd lost focus.
Friends vanished, as if his new vibration created a magnetic field that repelled them. Even his girlfriend, after weeks trying to adjust him back to normal, left. But Raphael didn't quit. Deep down, he knew. This solitude wasn't abandonment. It was a recalibration chamber. And 6 months later, something inexplicable happened. He woke up one morning with a complete vision for a regenerative architecture firm that integrated consciousness principles into building design. Within 3 months, he'd attracted investors who found him, clients who sought him out specifically, and a team of people who operated on his exact frequency. None of this could have happened while he was still locked in the old observational field. Here's what almost nobody understands. When you start living in energetic alignment with your soul, your frequency rises.
And elevated frequencies don't mix with repetitive patterns, limiting beliefs, or relationships based on emotional transaction. That's when the void appears. But this void isn't lack, it's preparation. because only in absolute silence can the soul whisper its deepest truths. Only in the absence of applause do you discover your strength never came from outside. Only when no one expects anything from you do you finally meet yourself. And when that happens, something extraordinary activates. You stop attracting people who need you and start attracting souls who recognize you. No more games, no more masks, no more friendships that require you to shrink so you can fit into their world. Only real encounters, deep connections that don't need explanations. This is expansion of consciousness in action, but there's a critical moment in this journey.
It's when you're strong enough not to lose yourself, but still vulnerable enough to doubt. That's when your mind tries to seduce you with phrases like, "Maybe I'm overreacting. Perhaps I should go back to adapting." Don't fall for that trap. That's not your voice. It's the echo of collective fear trying to pull you back into the cocoon. The tide only goes against you until you understand you're not part of the tide. You are the entire ocean, and oceans don't ask permission to exist. Now, let me show you what's happening in your brain during this isolation phase. Neuroscience has discovered something fascinating. When you remove yourself from familiar social patterns, your brain enters what's called neuroplastic reorganization. The neural pathways that kept you locked in old behaviors start dissolving. New synaptic connections form.
You're literally rewiring your consciousness at a biological level. But here's the quantum part that changes everything. According to the many worlds interpretation proposed by Hugh Everett, every quantum event splits reality into parallel timelines. Every decision you make, every thought you think, every frequency you emit creates a branch point. Right now, there are infinite versions of you existing across infinite timelines. The you who stayed in the corporate job, the you who never left that toxic relationship, the you who played it safe. But there's also the you who jumped, the you who trusted the void, the you who let everyone leave so something greater could arrive. The isolation you're experiencing isn't happening in this timeline alone. It's a dimensional shift. You're literally phasing out of one timeline and stabilizing in another. And during that transition, you exist in a state of quantum superposition where multiple realities overlap. That's why synchronicities spike during this period. That's why you keep seeing repeated numbers, running into the right person at the right time, receiving messages that feel cosmically coordinated. You're not imagining it. You're experiencing quantum entanglement between timelines. The holographic universe theory, proposed by physicist David Bohm, suggests that reality is a hologram where every part contains information about the whole. Your consciousness isn't separate from the universe, it's a fractal expression of it. When you change your internal frequency, you don't just change your perception, you change the actual holographic projection of your reality. But here's the catch, and this is where most people fail.
You can't collapse a new reality while still being observed by people anchored in the old one. Imagine you're a radio trying to tune into a new frequency, but you're surrounded by 10 other radios all blasting different stations. The signal interference makes it impossible to lock on to your frequency. That's what collective observation does to your quantum field. Every person who knows the old you is unconsciously broadcasting a signal that says, "This is who you are. This is what you're capable of. This is your limit." Their consciousness creates an observational collapse that keeps pulling you back to the familiar reality. This is why spiritual teachers throughout history withdrew before their awakening. Jesus spent 40 days in the desert. Buddha sat alone under the Bodhi tree. Muhammad retreated to the cave. They weren't running from the world.
They were removing observational interference, so their consciousness could collapse into an entirely new dimensional frequency, without being pulled back by the collective field. And yes, there will be days when everything seems to crumble, days when you question if it's worth it. But on those days, remember this: the tallest tree grows in the solitude of the forest. No one applauds its roots. No one sees the nights it fights against drought, wind, darkness, torrential rain. But when it finally touches the sky, everything changes. The world shifts, and everyone wants to sit in its shade. But here's what they don't tell you about that moment when you finally reach the top of that invisible, magnificent hill. Something unexpected happens with the people around you, and it's not what you think. Some of the people who left will try to come back.
Not because they changed, but because your new frequency now radiates something they crave but can't generate themselves. They'll show up with apologies, explanations, requests to reconnect. And this is your test. Because the universe isn't just asking if you can handle solitude, it's asking if you can handle selectivity. Can you maintain your new frequency even when the old world knocks on your door dressed in nostalgia? Can you honor the death you died to get here? Most people fail at this stage. They let everyone back in, thinking they've evolved enough to handle it. And within weeks, they're back in the old timeline, wondering what happened. The quantum field doesn't judge. It simply responds to your clarity of intention, 24 hours a day, whether you want it to or not. And right now, your intention is being tested.
Are you committed to the new reality, or are you still hedging your bets with one foot in the old one? Because you can't collapse two timelines simultaneously. You have to choose. And the choice happens not in your words, but in your energetic signature, in what you allow into your field, in who you give your attention to. Here's a practical framework. Every person in your life exists on a vibrational spectrum. Some match your new frequency. Some are neutral. Some actively pull you down. The isolation period is your opportunity to audit everyone, not from judgment, but from energetic discernment. Ask yourself, after I spend time with this person, do I feel expanded or contracted, inspired or drained, clearer or confused? Your body knows before your mind does. Trust that knowing. And understand this: the people who are meant for your new timeline will appear without force.
They'll show up through synchronicity, not strategy. You won't have to convince them of your worth or explain your vision. They'll simply recognize you because they're vibrating at the same frequency. That's how quantum resonance works. Like frequencies attract, not through effort, but through alignment. Now, let's talk about what happens in your pineal gland during this transformation. Ancient traditions called it the third eye. Modern neuroscience calls it the primary producer of DMT, the molecule of consciousness. When you remove external stimulation and enter deep solitude, your pineal gland activates. It starts producing specific neurochemicals that literally alter your perception of reality. You begin accessing information that doesn't come through your five senses. Insights arrive fully formed. Solutions appear without logical reasoning. This isn't mysticism. It's your consciousness expanding beyond the limitations of consensus reality. The simulation theory, proposed by philosophers and physicists like Nick Bostrom, suggests we might be living in an advanced computational reality. If that's true, then isolation is the moment you gain access to the source code. You're no longer just playing the game, you're learning to reprogram it. Every limiting belief you release, every old identity you shed, every frequency you raise is literally rewriting your code in the simulation. But you can't do that while still running the old program in the background. There's a concept in quantum physics called decoherence. It's when a quantum system interacts with its environment and loses its quantum properties, collapsing into classical behavior. When you're surrounded by people operating in classical consciousness, limited thinking, survival mode, your quantum potential decoheres. You collapse into predictable, classical behavior. The isolation protects your quantum coherence. It allows you to maintain the superposition state long enough for the new reality to stabilize. Think of it like developing a photograph in a dark room. You need complete darkness for the image to emerge. If you open the door too soon, flood the room with light, the image gets destroyed. Your new reality is developing right now in the darkness of your solitude. Don't open the door prematurely by inviting the old world back in. Trust the process. Honor the darkness. Let the image fully develop. And here's something that will probably challenge you. The isolation isn't just removing people, it's removing your addiction to external validation. Most of us have been trained since childhood to measure our worth by others' reactions. We learn to perform, to adapt, to shapeshift based on who's watching. That's not authentic existence. That's survival mode disguised as social grace. The universe is deprogramming you from that addiction. It's teaching you that your value doesn't fluctuate based on who recognizes it. This is where the Hermetic principle, as above, so below, becomes practical. Your external reality is a mirror of your internal state. When you achieve internal validation, when you no longer need anyone's approval to know your worth, your external reality reorganizes to match that frequency. Suddenly, opportunities arise, resources appear, the right people magnetize to you, not because you chased them, but because you finally stopped seeking outside yourself what was always within.
But let's be brutally honest about something most spiritual content avoids. This process hurts. There will be nights when the loneliness feels unbearable, moments when you question everything, days when you wonder if you made a catastrophic mistake walking away from the familiar. That pain is real, and it's necessary. You're grieving the death of your old self. You're mourning relationships that no longer serve you. You're releasing timelines that felt safe, even though they were suffocating you. Don't spiritually bypass that pain. Feel it fully. Let it move through you. Because on the other side of that grief is something most people never experience. True freedom. Freedom from needing to be understood. Freedom from performing for approval. Freedom from shrinking to make others comfortable. That freedom is your birthright, but you have to be willing to walk through fire to claim it.
Now, here's the part that separates those who complete the transformation from those who aborted halfway through. Somewhere in the middle of this isolation, you'll receive a test. An opportunity will arise that looks like your old life, dressed in better clothes. A job offer that pays well but requires you to compromise your new values. A relationship that feels comfortable but keeps you small. A social circle that welcomes you back if you just tone down your new energy. This is the universe asking, are you serious about this leap, or were you just experimenting? Your response to that test determines which timeline you collapse into. Choose the familiar comfort, and you phase back into the old reality with nothing changed, except now you know what you're capable of, and that knowledge will haunt you. Choose the unknown aligned path, and you complete the quantum leap. There's no judgment in either choice, but there are consequences. The universe doesn't punish, it just reflects. Let me tell you what happened with Raphael after those 6 months of isolation. He didn't just attract a new business, he became unrecognizable to his old self. The way he spoke changed, his presence in a room shifted. People started asking what he did differently, not because he told them, but because his energy demanded attention. He manifested a level of success that his old identity couldn't have even imagined, not because he worked harder, but because he removed every energetic block that was preventing his natural frequency from radiating. Within a year, his firm was featured in Architectural Digest. Within 2 years, he was speaking at conferences about consciousness-based design. Within 3 years, he'd written a book that became a bestseller in the holistic architecture space. None of this was planned. All of it emerged because he honored the isolation instead of fighting it. He let the old world leave so the new one could arrive. And most importantly, when old contacts tried to reconnect after seeing his success, he had the discernment to recognize who was genuinely aligned versus who just wanted proximity to his new frequency. That discernment is your most valuable asset during and after this transformation. Not everyone who applauds your success deserves access to your energy. Not everyone who congratulates you has your best interest at heart. Some people will try to study you, not to learn from you, but to figure out how to manipulate you. Stay sovereign, stay selective, protect your frequency like it's the most valuable thing you own, because it is.
The law of attraction. Real law of attraction, not the watered-down version sold in mainstream spirituality, states that you don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. During this isolation, you're becoming something entirely new, a frequency that didn't exist in your field before. And as that frequency stabilizes, your external reality must reorganize to match it. Not might, must. It's physics, not hope. But here's the final piece most people miss. The isolation eventually ends, but the selectivity doesn't. You're not going from alone to surrounded by everyone. You're going from unconscious connection to conscious curation. Your new life won't be crowded. It'll be carefully chosen. Quality over quantity, depth over breadth, soul recognition over social obligation. And that might mean your circle stays small.
It might mean you never return to the social frequency you once operated in. And that's not failure. That's alignment. Your time isn't measured by the world's clock. It's measured by your soul's rhythm. And when you finally reach the top of that invisible hill, when you look back at the valley where everyone else is still fighting for scraps of validation, you'll understand why you had to walk alone. Because leadership isn't about commanding. It's about radiating with such authenticity that others remember who they are. And that radiation begins in silence, in the no, in the yes you reserve only for what makes your soul vibrate. If this video resonated with you, if you felt seen, subscribe to this channel. We're building a community of people who are done playing small. And listen, there's something I haven't told you yet about what happens when you finally collapse into that new timeline. Something unexpected occurs with the people around you that almost no one talks about, and it's not what you think. I'll break that down in the next video that's about to appear on your screen. Don't miss it. If you want to go deeper, if you're ready to actually work with this energy instead of just understanding it intellectually, check out the products in the description. They're designed specifically for people in this transformation phase. And drop a comment right now. Tell me, have you felt like you were being prepared for something no one around you could see? Let me know. I read every single one. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.